All right, so what I want to do today, real quick here, is talk a little bit about just different types of training. And as we've been talking about all these different adaptations and the different adaptations that can happen in response to aerobic exercise, we've been kind of hitting on a lot of these different fuel systems and other things like that. As part of one of the assignments you guys are doing, that everybody is doing here, you're going to be developing a training plan for a hypothetical runner, and that hypothetical runner has about 3 to 5 miles, 3 times a week type of background, training background. Again, you're going to be picking either the 5K, the 10K, or the half marathon, and then using kind of that idea to generate an 8-week plan for them that would help to prepare them for that different type of race. What I was going to do with this PowerPoint here is really just kind of talk about some of the different types of aerobic training in terms of workouts, and specifically say running workouts, because that's what we're going to be doing on this assignment. And again, having you try to generate for that. Again, realizing that a 5K workout versus a half marathon are really going to be somewhat, not necessarily different energy systems, but definitely different levels of intensity and duration on that one. A 5K, generally 25 minutes or less, depending on your pace, but more intense, shorter. Where a half marathon, a lot of times people are looking at up to about 2 hours, sometimes more on a half marathon, but definitely pushing closer between that 1.5 to 2.5 hours. So as I'm talking about this stuff here, keep in mind some of these different demands of that particular race as we talk about some of these different types of workouts you can do, and again, what types of energy systems are going to be tapping into. Because again, really when you start talking about aerobic training, again, frequency, intensity, and duration are the big ones. But again, it's also what energy system is that event using, and based on what we've talked about, what types of adaptations can we get in there. And here we're going to be looking at what type of work can you do to bring about those adaptations. Again, knowing specificity is going to be the main thing there, where if you are doing something that is at lactate threshold, an event is at lactate threshold, you are definitely going to want to do more work on that on a particular training program versus something else. Again, also realizing that the more intensity you do for the longer durations, really the more recovery time that needs to be built into any of this. So again, I'll try to talk about some of this as I go along here, but again, keeping in mind what energy system the body's using and what are you trying to get as a result of this. So again, with endurance training, we want endurance, we want speed, and ideally as fast as we can go for the longest period of time, depending on that race. And again, we're going to do this a number of different ways. And again, depending on what type of run you're doing is going to play a role in what type of adaptation to bring about. And again, how often you might want to do it, other things along those lines. So some different types here. Again, a lot of the ones I've mentioned already, this long slow distance or LSD runs. You can then have stuff that is more tempo work, this stuff that is much faster and shorter called intervals, or just repetitions like that. And then fartleks we'll see are, it's a Swedish word for speed play. These are just kind of more kind of free flow, pick it up for a little bit, slow it down, and you'll see as we talk about it. So long slow distance training, again, this is one of those, if we were talking about those different lactate thresholds, this is definitely beneath LT1. Again, to really get it counting as long, I would say 30 minutes is not particularly long, but a lot of long slow distance I would say is generally 1 to 2 hours plus. Again, performed at an intensity that you can really have a conversation a lot of times without struggling. And unless you're doing a rather long event, this is something you're probably going to do once a week. Marathon training, you might be doing this more than once. Half marathon training, maybe, again, depending on that level. Again, one of the things I'll talk about at the end is just kind of, again, this idea of training age and how much somebody could actually do right away. Benefits on this one, it is going to be a lot better at getting increased capillarization to the muscles. Definitely increases that endurance. Again, because we're doing this on here, you're getting much better at burning lipids as your fuel source on this one. And these ones are going to get you better at sparing glycogen, using fat. And again, as you get more fit, you can generally do these at faster paces. And again, still keep it in that lipid use type of zone without getting into the high level glycogen. Again, making sure on any of this stuff here, and one of the things I would say when you're building this plan is also think about for this person what type of pace it would be, and I can maybe give you a little bit more information saying they've ran a particular event and this was their time. I'll add that information to the little assignment. So that is long, slow distance training. The next one here, whoops, I was going the wrong way. The next one here is, again, in the physiology of this slow distance training, again, less than 70% of VO2 max. Again, the number of adaptations we're getting here, like I said, more mitochondria, better blood supply to those tissues. These are going to help increase blood volume, increase your mitochondrial numbers and size. It's going to increase your ability to use fats and mobilize those fats, as well as get you better at handling increased heat loads on the body. And again, we'll talk about more of that as we get into the next set of topic area here. So with these runs, we will see, like it says there, up to 25% increases in blood volume, probably not over the 8 weeks, but more mitochondria, increased content. We know some of these are a little bit slower, so you may be just beginning the start of some of these on that. And again, that is going to let us exercise a higher percent of VO2 max without burning through energy. And again, longer ones here get us much better at, well, when you do a longer one like this, especially if you do it a little bit quicker, you will deplete glycogen, which means you get better at storing it. And again, as you use more and more fats, your body's going to learn how to spare the glycogen for those much higher intensity type of things. That increased plasma volume helps with heat dissipation. And again, we get better as we do this stuff over and over again. The repetition of that running is going to get you more efficient at recruiting these muscles and, again, being efficient with the use of the energy on these longer endurance type of things, because you will fatigue certain fibers and possibly pull other ones in because of that. Lactate threshold or tempo training. These ones, generally, you don't want to be doing it super long, at most up to an hour on these ones, but really 30 to 45 minutes at most, usually. Again, going to be much higher intensity than that long slow distance. Again, pushing up above that 70, probably above 80% of your VO2 max. Again, depending on the event, you might do something at a shorter, higher intensity event. You might do this training a couple times a week. If you're doing more long distance stuff, I would say, again, more likely on this one. Easier stuff, again, the longer stuff there, it's more long, slow distance, the longer distance you start going in this race. So again, keeping in mind 5K versus half marathon, 10K would be somewhere in the middle on that. There's different types you can do in these ones. You can do a little warm up and then just hold something that's a steady tempo pace, or you can do these runs where you're gonna run at a tempo for, let's say you're doing 5 miles, but you're gonna do a mile warm up, a mile hard, recover for a mile, do another mile hard at this threshold pace. And those, again, going to do different things on that one. When you're doing it constant, it's getting you probably better at not generating as much. When you're going hard and then backing off, it's going to help work on clearance of lactate and maybe not as much on not generating as much of this. But again, going to improve speed and endurance, going to improve your ability to last at intensity for a longer period of time, doing these threshold training types of things. And again, is above that 75% of VO2 max. And again, your lactate threshold pace is probably about something you can hold for about an hour. Definitely going to be, what we're trying to do is get it to shift that lactate threshold further to the right so you can go higher intensity before you start building up onset of blood lactate. And again, as you get more fit, you can do a little bit more exercise at these paces. And again, we will see decreases in the production of lactose as well as increases in clearance of this. Again, it's going to make you better at being able to deal with any event that would be building this up. So again, those higher intensity events, this is something you might look at putting into a plan a little bit more often. Interval training, this is really high-end running, so high intensity for short periods of time. So something on these ones, it might be anything from a 200 meter up to maybe 1800s or 1200s, along with a recovery period that's about the same length as this one, and you might do 3 or 4 or 5 of the repeats of this. Again, really high intensity interval with a recovery period that's almost equal to that. Again, these are working you much closer to your VO2 max. Again, higher intensity events, you might do this more often, but generally these ones maybe once a week. Certain things like marathon training, you don't hardly do any of this. Half marathon training, probably not a ton of it. And again, these really beat up the body. You can't do these type of workouts every day. These are going to put you into a very high stress state. So the chances of overtraining as you do more of this is going to become higher. It is definitely going to improve your speed. It improves muscle recruitment in terms of fibers and those more powerful fibers, bringing those into this. Again, a lot of times this is getting you feel something that's sometimes worse than you might even be doing it in that competition. So you're running faster than your, let's say, your 5K race pace. You're doing these intervals at a higher pace than that. Again, it's going to help you out of this. This is going to be doing a lot of stuff closer to that VO2 max. It's going to help with a lot of those glycolytic and buffering types of things here. So again, not as much as the endurance, but starting to go to a little bit more of that anaerobic, because really at the intensity level you're doing on these ones, you are going to be a little bit more anaerobic. But some of that speed and that muscle recruitment, that neuromuscular changes and the increased strength can be useful for these longer events. Again, used sparingly. Again, fartlek training, these are kind of these, it's like I said, it's Swedish for speed play is the word. Fartlek means speed play. These are a much looser kind of intensity variation. You might be doing a run where you're running for 60 minutes, where you might every so often kind of see something off in the distance that maybe is 600 meters away, and you're going to pick it up to that street sign. You're going to run faster to that street sign and then back off, and then pick it back up again and work at different levels throughout. Again, depending on how often you're doing the little intervals and then the intensities, this can work any of those different energy systems. It's, again, a way to kind of play around if you're doing this one. And a lot of times if you're doing it with a group, it's a way to kind of have people try to stay with you and kind of goof around a little bit, pick it up, slow it down, and do a few things like that. Oh, wrong way. So for most people, really, and I've said this a couple times already, most of the work should be done on the easy level. So either just kind of easy runs, and again, easy runs are not long so distance. You might just do a half hour, 45-minute run, 3 to 4 miles, easy. That is something that's letting the body recover a little bit, and again, giving you that aerobic stressor to kind of keep maintaining these types of things here. Again, anything less than probably 3 runs a week, you're not going to be maintaining any of the adaptations you're bringing about. But really the principle a lot of times is that 80-20. 80% should be easy. Again, if you're doing a little bit faster event, maybe 70% should be pretty easy. And then that 20 to 30, doing a little bit more of that high intensity threshold work. So again, too much high intensity and speed is not going to be good for an athlete. You will tend to burn them out, and you're much more likelihood for overtraining. Again, too much distance as well. And again, this is all stuff to kind of think about when you're making these plans, is that really we know the hypothetical runner I'm giving you is running about 15 miles-ish a week. You don't want to be giving them 30 or 35 miles on the first week of their training. You want to start out kind of where they're at, maybe bump them a little bit, but not jump them to a point that they're going to break down. Again, you have to build that up. A lot of times they talk about something called the 10% rule. About any particular week, you only want to up the overall distance in any particular week about 10%. You can go a little bit more than that when you're making these plans, but again, it's something you want to be aware of. You shouldn't be going from 20 miles one week and having somebody run 50 miles the next week as you make these plans. And this is part of the reason I'm going to give you some feedback on these and give you some ideas of things to think about. And again, this is a nice little one here that is kind of talking about some of these different types of running and trainings and what energy system they're tapping into and maybe where they're going to help you increase your performance. So velocity, overall max pace, and some of the stuff you might do with that versus run economy versus what types of energy systems you're using. Again, depending on the event, and that's what I want you to pick out as you do this assignment. Pick an event and tailor what you're doing to that particular event that you're writing this 8-week training plan for them on. And then again, just to show you something, and don't take this. So this is kind of showing you a half marathon training kind of idea plan here of what they might do on somebody. It's kind of showing you some weeks into it here. Again, I don't want you to go and take this and just write this down. I will not give you a lot of points if you do the exact same thing I'm showing you here. But again, it's kind of showing you that mix. Again, half marathon, you're going to want to be doing a little bit more distance each week. You would want to build them up throughout that a little bit. And again, talking about some of those ideas of how often you're doing some speed work or tempo work. That's all stuff to keep in mind as you do this. And again, just kind of showing you these things that are going to hit on that endurance a little bit more than the speed. Other than that, like I said, this is really just a little background piece there. On the assignment page, I've given you a couple different resources that you could look at to give you some information about types of different runs and a little bit what they're going to do for you. Again, we will try to talk about this a little bit more in class, and I will try to get a Zoom for those of you that are online on Friday to talk a little bit about this assignment for those of you that can show up.